today, if you want to take it away.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, for today, we're going to be discussing kind of the current environment of the quality and recall process today. We'll introduce myself and Ralph, and we'll kind of go through here and talk about what's happening, why it's happening, the impact of it happening, and what a good quality system looks like. Ralph will go into more detail about the actual details of the quality system, and then we'll actually do a demonstration of the Acumatica quality system, and that's what we'll be presenting to you today. After the demonstration, we'll have some Q&A for everybody to ask questions, but please, this is interactive, so if you have any questions, please just post them in the chat, and Emily will be watching that, and she'll make sure we get those questions as they come about during the conversation. So next, Ralph. So as far as the speakers, it's myself, Nick. I'm Vice President of Sales at Ativo Group. Even though it says sales, I was an implementer, a support staff, had my own firm for quite a while, selling a variety of ERP systems. And I just happened to somehow end up with a lot of food clients, a lot of name brands that you guys are aware of that I've supported over the years. So Ralph, why don't you introduce yourself?
And I'm Ralph Kubek. I'm Director of Sales and Services at eWorkplace Apps that has a contractual relationship with Acumatica to build out their quality management solution. I've been around ERP for a long time. A lot of that time was actually as part of a CPA consulting firm that we had a lot of food and drug clients that got us deeply involved in this subject. And I've been working with ERP and Acumatica for a number of years now.
Yep. Next. Yeah. So just real quick here, I don't spend a lot of time about this, but the Ativo Group has been around since 1992. This is not a Johnny-come-lately firm. We have been supporting ERPs over the year, but we consider ourselves more a business consulting firm that focuses on a variety of industry, one of which is food and beverage. The core ERPs or enterprise software we use are a variety of them: Acumatica, SAP Business One, Dynamics Business Central, NetSuite, Macola. There's a whole variety of them that do great jobs depending on each customer's needs. But again, we are a business consulting firm that just has quite a few food and beverage customers that we support. Next. So I think I want to start off with a really quick story here. True story that happened to me a few years ago. Was working with a dairy in Los Angeles. They were looking to get a new ERP because their quality system wasn't up to speed, and they knew they kind of needed to redo the whole thing. And they took months and months to go through this process. Trying to get the right solution. And it was funny when we toured their factory, or when I toured the factory, their whole system was paper-based, Excel, a little quality system they had, very disjointed. Well, they made a decision to go with the ERP I was selling, and they ghosted me. Didn't hear from them for a while. Finally, I read in the paper that their product was being recalled, and that one of their consumers or their customers died because of it. I kind of knew what happened at that point and kind of stayed away. About a year later, I happened to be in the neighborhood, stopped by to say hi and see how things were going. And this 3-generation dairy product manufacturer didn't have the money because they had to close their facility for 4 months to completely clean it out so they would get approval to reopen. And at the end of the day, they sold themselves to a bigger conglomerate, which was not their goal. And it's just an example of how quickly things can change because of quality and our lack thereof, and then recalls. So one of the things we noticed today is in the media headlines. I've all read about Boar's Head. That's a common one. I think you all know about that. But since 2017, there's been like 122 recalls to cheese and deli meats, and about 17 million pounds recalled. It's happened with onions. It's happened with leafy greens, which you hear all the time about, and about 5 million cases, 4.4 million cases have been recalled. On top of that, this has led to consumers looking for some kind of payback, and now there's lawsuits out there. And the funny thing about it is, if you go look, there are numerous law firms out there right now advertising for people saying, hey, have you experienced food poisoning? Which are nuisance suits if you think about it, but it's still a cost of doing business in today's environment. And one of the estimates is the average cost of a food recall for a company is about $10 million. So this is something that's happening today. We're all aware of it. I'm not telling you anything new, but that's the current environment. Next slide, Rob. So one of the things we got is why? Why are the recalls on the rise, right? And one of the things is just increased oversight. It's, is it by the USDA, the FDA, the Federal Trade Commission, all these people are increasing their oversight. Is it because consumers are complaining? Is it just because they found things and they're increasing? But there is increased oversight. On top of that, Darren Ditwiller, who is a expert in food safety, professor, considered one of the 21 people who have shaped food safety, a couple of the observations he made is the global supply chain, the complexity of the modern food chain and the reliance on that global sourcing has increased the risk of the contamination, right? That can happen because we're buying from other areas of the world. On top of that, you have consumer preferences, right? So the whole farm to fork kind of consumer idea and preference has pushed consumers to want ready to eat products or fresh produce, which is more susceptible to contamination, as we see all the time with all the leafy green recalls. Next one. So the impact of this increase is there have been over 180 recalls year to date as of the end of September. On top of that, there's been an increase in those recalls. Obviously, have a lot of impact on the companies. On top of that, you also have social media, and I think this is a big factor that we need to really address, and that is you have supposed experts and influencers controlling the narrative of, and these individuals have numerous followers. I mean, we're talking millions of followers, and they're installing fear in your customers, and they're not experts in this. They're just trying to get clicks. I know one example of there was a sizeflation, not exactly the same thing, but with a cake mix. And I was surprised to think that had 16 million views, and a lot of the comments were saying, "I'll never buy that product again." Think about that, 16 million views. That's, if you could get 60 million people to just identify your product, that's a great thing. So this is the impact of this. Next. So the question is, is your quality system ready for today's environment, right? Is the functionality there to ensure food safety? Can you quickly resolve the issues and identify them before the product gets out the door? And also, can you take back that media narrative? Do you have the records and certifications to prepare yourself and defend yourself against a fraudulent claim? Next one. Next, sorry. So the question is, what does a quality solution look like? Like, what does it have in it? And that's important. So we need to talk about, the testing of inbound ingredients, right? You get the product coming, the global sourcing we talked about. Are we testing those ingredients? On top of that, you need to have real-time testing on the production floor. That's critical. And that ability to instruct your employees to make sure they're following the rules and the recipes. And then you have the lot traceability, which is obviously critical nowadays. And I know that Ralph will be talking about that quite a bit, but that lot traceability in the production cycle to make sure you can identify the lot of ingredients in your final product. And then I think another big one is just having all the records that you need in case there is a recall, in case there is a media headline, that you can defend yourself of saying, look at these, we've audited our vendors, we have our COAs from them, we have checked their performance, we have done everything we can and to make sure that you guys are looked at as a good manufacturer of product, because you don't want your brand ruined. So that's just an overview of the current environment. We're talking about quality systems, and I'll pass this off to Ralph to kind of take it over and go the details of the quality system.
Very good. Thanks, Nick. Before I go into this slide, just Nick brings up something interesting, right? Equality, and it's really you have to view the process is in its entirety. I mentioned I was part of a CPA consulting firm for a long time, and one time we had a national chain that had global purchasing agreements, and in order to be fresh and all that, they began to decentralize. They then began to let local areas buy local food. Well, suddenly they lost control, right, of being able to control and test all of the local quality things. And then they had to make some changes and kind of revert back to a central processing aspect in terms of quality. So we're going to talk about some things in quality, but you also have to look at holistically, right? How are your organizations going to work? If you're getting items from 10 suppliers, that's one thing. If you're getting it from 150 and each of your regions has a different supplier, right? That puts a lot more burden and a lot more systems in place to make certain you're tracking all that quality. In terms of quality systems, this we're going to be talking through what relates to Acumatica, but they're pillars that most other quality systems should have. There's really six pillars in a quality management system to support someone in food, etc. We need to make certain that a product meets its specification, and we need to do that when it's received, when it's shipped, when we're producing it. We want to make certain that tools are inspected, right? You have cutters, you have other things that are in the process, right? We always need to make certain they're clean, they're within tolerances, etc. We always want to make certain we're buying, or in many cases, you need to make certain that there's vendors that have the criteria, have the certifications to supply those items to you. We want to document standard operating procedures. It's one thing to say that the product meets its specification and you did the right thing. There's another thing to say we've documented the fact that we have sanitized the equipment, we have cleaned the equipment, etc. When any of those things fail, you need to have a corrective and preventive action workflow. We'll talk about mock recalls and other things, but just as important, when you do see a failure, you need to document that. And then lastly, there's vendor performance, right? This is more in a purchasing perspective, but you're always going to want to know, right, how vendors are actually performing. What does this mean for receiving? So that's a high level. Now, Nick mentioned some things in terms of various aspects of your business. There's receiving, right? We need to define what tests we're going to do for an item. And then we have to define what items we want to test. We create purchase orders. We might want to validate that, yes, this item is coming from a reputable vendor or someone who meets our qualifications. We then have to receive the merchandise. And important in the Acumatica world, and what should be important in all worlds, is that this integrated process. We're receiving the ERP system. The ERP system should know it's here. The ERP system should know that it has to be QC'd and begin to generate the appropriate electronic documents, right? We all want to go paperless in terms of recording data for fast recovery. And we also want to make certain things are quarantined. Gone are the days where something comes in, we want to pass something to a QC person and hope the fact that they sign off on it before it's actually purchased, moved into production, etc. So it all needs to be integrated in together. Same thing as it relates to RMAs and QMAs, right? RMAs, someone returns something. We want to make certain that there's a strong process to document the customer complaint. What happened? Once we get it in, then we have to follow a rather regimented process to say, what do we think happened with that? And what are we going to do to help ensure that that problem doesn't happen before? Nick mentioned production, but just as important is things that we do in product stability and testing. People want to, or you should be kind of proactively looking at things. So within the infrastructure, many entities will retain some samples. And then you should have some sampling plans out there that's going to say every 30 days, every 60 days, once a year, whatever we might want to do. We want to test these items. Are they still within tolerances? Are they staying fresh, etc.? That way you can kind of begin to proactively deal with items, right? We're going to talk about mock recalls in real core calls, but doing this stability testing, keeping control is going to alert you that, wait a minute, if my sample's going bad or if my sample's beginning to move out of tolerance, I better proactively begin to work or proactively begin to follow up with things that I've actually sold and pushed out to the public. And there's a strong ability to do that within, again, the Acumatica framework. Um, Nonconformance corrective action. We do all this testing, and it's great that you will find out there is a problem. Next is you need to begin to formally document what happened, right? You're going to move that to some type of material review board, and then you're going to want to do some discovery. You're going to find out what the root cause was, what actions you're taking, and that might just be a one-step process. You found something, you need to fix it. However, maybe it is a major issue that you're dealing with, and then you're going to have to do more investigation. You're going to have to begin to do, what are we going to do to correct this problem, and what are we going to do to prevent this problem. And then a key thing of nonconformance and corrective action is you have to make certain that you're going to be able to validate it. Someone needs to audit the fact that you actually did the things that you said you were going to do. Then we have to dispose of the material, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to burn it? Are we going to return it to stock? Are we going to return it to a vendor? So that's a whole process that you need to begin to follow and need to begin to understand. Lot traceability. We're going to talk about mock recalls next. But within the system, you need to be able to trace, right? The part of a mock recall is, can I begin to trace things? Important to note that what you have to be able to do is do this both forward and backwards, right? What raw material where to go to. The flip side is, if I get a complaint for a customer, what did they buy? What lot number? And you're going to begin to see how within the Acumatica framework, we're doing both forward and backward lot traceability. So we do a recall, but along with that recall, we need to make certain we know what happened to an item, where did it come from. Now, mock recalls is, I'm going to now move from the aspect of we have some quality processes. Now we need to begin to put into place an ability to do a recall, right? We have to be prepared for that day someone walks in and asks for things, and you need to begin to plan and know how you want to do this. So what's a mock recall? It's just there to begin to be an exercise where you know what you're going to do should a problem resolve. It's a process that revolves replicating steps so that you can operate in an efficient, effective way. Why are we going to do this? Well, if something were to happen, it gives you the capability now to know exactly what you're going to do, exactly how you're going to do it, and it becomes repeatable and understandable. What do you do to create a mock recall? You first of all have to identify a scenario, right? A real world scenario. You need to establish the item that you want to recall, and you have to have a core team. You might have to have people in warehousing, people in production. Make certain that it's a well-rounded team so that those people, as they're identifying things that went wrong, have been involved in the whole process, right? That team needs to be the complete manufacturing process, life cycle management process, etc. You need to select the lot number. You need to perform the traceability. We need to create some reports to do that. We then need to communicate and notify to everyone what we're doing, and then what measure and how effective it was. And then this is constant improvement, right? We're going to do this over and over again so that we're prepared. We know how to react. So the first time something, God forbid, happens to you, it's now not a fire drill. It's a process that you've gone through, and I would include in some cases work with some quality or some customers of yours that are friendly to you, so to speak, and let them know this is what we're going to do. And maybe you include them in your process so they feel comfortable that you do have a process in place and they know how you're going to react and what they need to do should they get involved in a process. Uh, what are the best procedures why are we doing this? Right? It maintains product trust, it minimizes risks, it improves the efficiency should something happen, and it begins to identify weaknesses in the process. whether it's the process, whether it's testing, etc. And most important, like everything else, right? You need to continue to improve, or you fall back. So those are the things to do. The tips for doing a mock recall: just don't say we're going to do this, right? There's clear objectives. What do you want to improve upon? Timing, accuracy, etc. They have to be realistic scenarios. Don't pick your simplest product. Don't maybe pick your most difficult product, but make certain it's a typical product. Make certain maybe it's something that you make and it's a intermediate, and that intermediate could go to five or six different items. So if we're recalling orange juice, for instance, and there's a problem, it might have been packaged into a 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon container. It might have been in pint cartons. So do something that's realistic, and then you need to make certain everything is documented. Again, communicate through the whole channel, and then make certain that key people are involved. So those are things that help mock recalls become important and valuable to you. This is just a sample, right? You're going to begin to get all these slides as you're going through the process. This is just a typical letter that we have helped people correct. And there is actually another government agency that's out there that has quite a few samples of what a recall might look like, and sample letters, etc., that are involved in uh, the recall of an item. So we talked about quality. We talked about the ability to deal with recalls. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to go in, and this is the hardest part of every presentation for me, because I need to just switch screens. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And now I'm going to share this other screen. And what hopefully people see in about 2 seconds is you should see an Acumatica screen. I say Acumatica, that's the product. Ativo Group is really the source of the information, right? Many ERP systems are the same. Some people might argue they're almost all the same. It's almost more important to work with who the entity that you're working with to help you make certain that you evolve correctly and you're using all these features. So again, this is Acumatica, but the focus is really the TiVo Group, and Nick went through their background, et cetera, as it relates to food and other things that they've been working on. So hopefully people can see my screen. I don't know, Nick or
Yes, you
Emily.
can. We can see your screen, Ralph.
Good. That's good news, right? So ju- just an example, I'm going to go through what an ERP system could look like in terms of when I'm going to do a purchase order receipt. So I'm going to go in and indicate that I'm going to receive this item in. Again, there's a purchase order process that, and I'm going to get some type of shells in, right? Pasta shells, whatever the case might be. The first element that you see is there's a problem with the certificate. So part of the continuous improvement, part of good manufacturing processes is there is probably documentation, or there should be documentation. What is needed for this item to be acquired, and then has the vendor provided you their latest FDA readings or their FDA ratings, their internal audits, etc. And what this is saying is that one of two things is true: this vendor has not provided me all the details they should have in order to, in this case, receive, but it's really buy, right? Because this be in the front end, buy this product from you. Or as you could see, it's expired. So maybe they're a good vendor, but they just haven't given me the latest update. Now I'm going to receive one of these. And we talked about standard operating procedures. We want to find errors as quickly as we can. So just to make you aware, in Acumatica, release means post. But you notice this is not letting me bring this into inventory. Again, different ways to get messages, but the truck just pulled up and I'd like to unload the truck. And this is saying, no, you can't unload the truck yet. Why? Because we want to do some inspections. We want to document some things that we might need, or we do need to, number one, verify that this is a product that meets its specification, as well as we might want to begin to look at the product. So I'm going to describe this form in a few minutes, but what we need to do if we're in food, we might want to go out there and we might want to document electronically. So now we begin to have the basis of electronic records for QC, electronic batch tickets. So I might want to document that this item, the truck is clean. The other thing is I might want to take the temperature, right? This is a refrigerated item and we need to document what's the temperature of that truck before we take it off. Does two things. Number one, it documents this so you know that you're following the procedures. You have that record. The flip side is, maybe it's out of spec and you're going to document this. You're going to record the temperature. And then what your receiving people are going to do is they're not going to unload the truck. They're going to turn around the truck and they're going to say leave. And all that's documented within the system. Now, once you decide, yes, I want to bring this in, it now comes into inventory. And again, that's a release. Oh, I forgot to put in the lot number. Well, that's pretty important for traceability purposes. So I put in that lot number. Again, it might be yours, it might be your vendor's. As we talked about, a key thing is quarantining material. So the system is automatically saying this item came in and this item is going to be put into a particular quarantine location. Why is it in that quarantine location? Because we want to make certain that we can't sell this item, use this item, move this item, whatever, until QC signs off on it. So it's now quarantined. We know that we're not going to use this item in production until someone signs off on it. Alerts and triggers go off, but for purpose of getting through this and timely basis, I'm just going to drill into what we call a QC order. Again, think of this being a digital record. This digital record might start out with people maybe attaching some notes to this, right? What did I see? What did I observe in terms of this item? Maybe the entity has provided me a certificate of analysis or something that I might want to begin to use that I might need to document. Could be a picture, could be anything that relates to this particular item. So I'm going to take that and now I'm going to upload that. And now the system is going to let me know, gee whiz, I have some notes that are out there, as well as I'm going to see that there's a document attached to this item. And I keep saying documents files. The top part of a good electronic record contains what? It contains the item that you're receiving it from, who you're receiving it from, the lot number you're receiving it from, the date it's been received. And how are you going to sample this, right? We have different sample sizes. Those actually could vary based upon the vendor. And we also have ALQ, acceptable quality limits, right? It's going to say how many samples that I have and, are they good or are they bad and how I'm going to evaluate it. So that's the top part of that electronic record. The bottom part are the tests that I'm going to do. This might be a case where I'm going to say, is it red? And the system's going to tell me. Now there's some numeric readings we might need to take. And I'm purposely going to fail these. And then there's just a true and false, right? All the questions that you will design or you will set up for this item into the system, and you're going to be able to go ahead and take care of those for this particular item. So I can begin to go ahead and I can begin to indicate that yes, I have done those items. Oh, look at this. I haven't done. You need to hide that item. I'm going to pass this digitally. Again, recall purposes, validation purposes, who did what when. It's letting me know who took all these readings. When we do demos, we're administrators, so you're only going to see one name, but that's going to be the person who did the work. I've now tested the product. It's told me it's failed. The system then, based upon how you set up sampling and your ALQ, acceptable quality rules, is going to let us know this has failed. That's the second step. So from security, while I'm going to do everything today, one person could do the test, another person could evaluate the test. And then the last part of this is posting. Posting is the final approval that says, is this good or is this bad? And I'm done with that. This is an inventory transaction, right? Because this is sitting in this quarantine area. And now since this is not any good, we're going to return it, right? I might have to go in here and what am I going to do with it? I'm going to transfer it to a reject bin, or I might be returning it to a vendor. So again, we're not going to go from quality into inventory. We're going to, because this one was rejected, we're going to go ahead and push it from quality into another location that we control, and we make certain that the ERP system does not allow me to sell it, use it, etc. The other pillar of this is non-conformance and corrective action. Again, dashboards and alerts are going to go off, but on an integrated basis, what we do create for you is a non-conformance transaction where I could begin to, first of all, be alerted. And this is the quality person that's going to get a workflow. It's going to say, why am I getting this workflow? You route it. It's saying, well, this item came in from this vendor with this lot number, and these are the tests that got failed. I could begin to do some research for this item. And eventually this is signed off on. So I'm going to say it's okay to proceed. And now I'm going to go into the next step of the process, which is what we call root cause analysis. Now, here, again, this is going to be configurable by you because you're going to be able to go in and add different types of reasons for root cause analysis, and you're going to go through that process and you can begin to deal with what actions you took. And again, for traceability purposes, you're going to have a complete history of who did what when. Some cases, as I indicated, it wasn't a simple issue, it was a major issue. So you might want to create a corrective and preventive action workflow. I'm not going to go into detail with this, but it goes one step higher. This is now letting us say, let's do more investigation. What really happened to this item? And then you can go ahead and indicate what are we going to do to correct it? What are we going to do to prevent it? And who audited it? So a complete history. And so now we have a cradle to grave process in here that's saying this item was supposed to be tested. It was tested. It failed. We then document why it failed. We then have to document what are we going to do to prevent this from happening again. So there's a complete cradle to grave history of what we've done to test the item. So that's important as it relates to the capability of making certain materials are correct. The same processes exist within Acumatica when we're building an item. We're making an item. We take that orange juice and we squeeze it. We might want to stop the production process to make certain it meets specifications, right? We don't want to bottle things until we know the liquid is good. And then even after we bottle the liquid, we might want to test that and we might quarantine it and then put that aside. So again, it's a complete cradle to grave type process to go through. As the other piece of this is we're going to talk a little bit now, going back to mock recall and traceability. Um, Things do happen. So there needs to be a way to go ahead and run a report. Now, again, we could trigger mock recall letters out of this, but I really want to go to this screen to indicate what do we do. We're able to indicate what item are we worried about, right? I'm worried about some type of crude oil or something that I put in. What lot number am I going to look at? Notice we could do two things. We could do this forward and backward. More importantly is this area. In terms of my history, and I think Nick and I have talked about this a little bit, is it was amazing how many times when we have been involved in a recall, it had nothing to do with receiving bad product or making bad product, or to some extent shipping bad product. What it really related to was the inventory movements. That's why we have this transfer routine on our recall report. So now every time that item moves in inventory, the system is going to document it. What's happened before is this is an item that was supposed to be in a freezer, and lo and behold, we find out there was an inventory transaction that took it off the assembly line, production line, and it moved it to the ambient warehouse. And it happened to be in the ambient warehouse for 3 hours. And it wasn't supposed to be there for 3 hours. It was supposed to go directly to the refrigerator or freezer. So, again, it's important to note all the different transactions that happen for this item. Maybe this is something that got returned and mucked up the process. What does this report need to look like? This report needs to look like uh, the fact that it needs to start out with, in my case, since I'm doing it backwards, I need to know all the places this item was sold to and when it was sold to. That inventory transfer, I want to see all these inventory transactions, right? This is letting me know it's going from shipping to hold to shipping to hold. I'd be able to see on this inventory transfer from when it came out of production, because this is letting me know the production order was made on. I'm going to see, wait a minute, why did they move that to an ambient warehouse? Why did they move it to where they shouldn't? If I continue to scroll through or look at this report, it's going to continue to give me all the detailed transaction, all the inventory transactions. Then it's letting me know what this raw material came from, when was received, and what PO was received on. Important in many recall situations or mock recall, because what are you going to do if there's a mock recall? You're going to do two things. You want to find out where it was. You also want to make certain you immediately find all the material that's in your warehouse and quarantine that. Now, in this case, this report saying, you know what, I've sold or I've used all these items. However, this report can let us know, along with selling it, we do have some material set inside. This material might actually be the orange juice, right? We squeeze that orange juice, we put it in a silo, we haven't used it all up, so it's going to let me know where it's bad. Forward is just the reverse, right? And we've received this item. We've done some backward. We know the raw materials. We've identified the raw material that's an issue. Now we're going to turn this around and say, okay, I know what lot number this came from. Now I need to look at this report and find out all of the different places this went to. So important to deal with lot traceability. The last item I'm just going to go into is vendor rating, which becomes critical in most of our clients in terms of rating entities. And we begin to see entities rate vendors on four main attributes: price, how are we doing in terms of price? But more importantly, to this conversation about quality, is we could begin to rate them on quality. We could rate them in terms of quantity supplied, right? Fulfilled shipments, as well as on time delivery. The system then allows you to provide points or weights to this. And now the end result is periodically you could go into the system when you would wish to, and then begin to compute. The system will let you know how's Ralph rated in terms of quality, right? Because we're keeping track of rejects, etc. The other place to look at that becomes important for food is we have tools. So every day, a tool might have to be sharpened. Maybe a tool needs to be sanitized, whatever the case might be. So the infrastructure of Acumatica does allow you to say, for this tool, it's active. You're going to be able to go in and indicate on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, what do we need to do to document that this is a tool that we should begin to use. We also do this by work centers, right? Work centers are areas in a plant that you're going to do things. When you begin to build a routing in Acumatica, it could go from the cutting room to the slicing room to the grinding room. Well, every day, maybe every shift, someone needs to document that that room was cleaned, etc. So the same way, we could have test plans, if I could use that term, to make certain that machines and tools have properly been maintained, have been washed, etc. You then have the same capability to do that with tools, machines, or again, certain rooms that you could document that. Yes, we know that 8 o'clock is say Ralph went in and he washed the floors and he went through all the different procedures to ensure that room was clean. So we wanted to take about 45 minutes or so to give you an overview of quality, why this is important, step you through the main elements that ERP system should have to ensure, again, the item is made properly, it meets its spec, you've documented standard operating procedures, you've documented the fact that you've cleaned the equipment, you've sanitized the equipment, that, before a kosher food run was done, we signed off that it's been cleaned and blessed in those other items. We also wanted to show you how stability testing is important, right? You're going to maintain those samples to do things. And finally, we talked about recall, what's important to recall. However, the ERP system needs to go one step further. Not only let you know what you need to recall, it needs to tell you when was it made, how was it made, who signed off on it, and what raw materials went into it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and is going to turn this over to Emily. Well, I'm not going to. I'm going to go back to the other screen that I have, which is the PowerPoint, and turn it back to Emily to find out if we have any questions have come in and how we might be able to answer those.
Yes, thank you, Ralph. Now would be a good time if anyone has any questions. We have a couple. Just put them in the chat and we can answer them for you. First question is, how often do firms practice mock recalls?
I'll go first. I would say that most of our clients end up doing these mock recalls at least once a month, and they do it on different days of the week. Monday, Friday, Saturday, right? Going back to the standard operating procedures. People are going to work differently. Who do we find? How do we contact people? So, again, Nick, I don't know what you found, but most of our clients do it at least on a monthly basis.
Yeah, mainly what I find is when we normally we're getting there at the beginning of the process in terms of their improving their quality system. So the biggest concern I get is the length of time of the mock recall, from it being an all day process of gathering documents to I've seen really well-oiled machines get this done in less than a couple of hours, 45 minutes, stuff like that, when it's all moving smoothly.
So our next question is, how does a mock recall and a traceability report relate to one another?
Mock recall is, think of that just strictly a way for you to begin to know who bought the product, who you provided the product to, when you provided it, etc. So that is letting you know where it went. The traceability is then the report that is going to give you the history, the hereditary, the heritage, I guess, of the item. I'm bouncing around my words a little bit, but then that's going to say, you know what? When was that lot that Ralph just bought made? What were the raw materials that went into it? What are their lot numbers? What other controls did we have in place? So, mock recall just says, how do we get it back? Traceability says, how do we make it?
Yeah, the picture we normally see is um, a consumer calls you, says we have a problem with the product. They're going to give you a lot number. You want to be able to go into your system, enter that lot number, and go back to all the ingredients used to make that item. And if there was maybe a suspect item, to take that item now and that lot number related to that item, put it back into your system and show everywhere where that item was used in a final good, where that final good currently stands, whether it's in the warehouse or has been shipped to a customer, right? That's the whole concept of this thing. That's what we're all dealing with. And the question is, how fast can you do it nowadays?
Thank you, guys. Someone put in the chat that there was a issue with the chat. It is working, just if anyone, for whatever reason, it wasn't working before. Next question is, why is quarantine a key control step?
Nick, you want to take that?
Yeah. So on the quarantine side, when the product comes in, right, mainly when it comes in the door, you want to be able to test it, whether it's sampling or just some sort of diagnostic on the product, and to be able to make sure that no one inadvertently grabs it and brings it into production. And you want to make sure that you have time to complete the test. So the whole bringing in of the product and making sure we're not using it right away is critical, and being able to quarantine that out and identify that it's in the warehouse for production purposes, but to make sure you're not utilizing it.
Next question is, what's the difference between testing and completing checklists?
In our terminology, right, this sometimes becomes vendor specific, but within the Acumatica framework, a test is something that we do to validate that the item meets its design specification. A checklist is acknowledging that you performed a function. So think about that transaction. I said a checklist to us is someone went out and they made certain that the truck was clean, and they made certain that it was the right temperature. That's a checklist. The test is, was the density, was the acidity of the vegetables we just took off. The flip side is when we're making that orange juice, a test at the end is that we're going to check the color, we're going to check the acidity of the orange juice. The checklist is, did someone clean the machine? Did someone sanitize the machine? So that is how we use those two terms.
Okay, can you answer, can the system create intelligent lot numbers?
The answer is yes. Um, it could be based upon the production order, the date, really any user defined information that you want. I would say related to that question is yes, we can create intelligent lot numbers. The flip other side of that is the lot numbers will have expiration dates, use by dates, etc. And the system will, within the Acumatica framework, when you're using material, will suggest that you use up the oldest lot or the earliest expiration date. So yes, create a lot number under user defined preference. The answer is yes, as well as help you make certain you use the correct lot numbers.
Next question is, can tests for the same item be different for different vendors in Acumatica?
The answer is yes, and it would go one step further. The tests could be different, as well as the sampling and the ALQ, the acceptable quality limit rules. So, you're getting it from the main vendor. Maybe you're only going to test 10% of the items, but it's a new vendor. Maybe you want 100% inspect them. Maybe you're going to want to, have them inspect 50%, as well as maybe you're going to evaluate them differently. Let's just say you take 10 samples. Maybe your good vendor, if you take 10 samples and one of them fails, it might be okay. But if you take your new vendor and suddenly they take one sample and it fails, maybe you're going to treat them differently. So yes, the test could be different, the sample size could be different, and your ALQ, acceptable quality limits, could be different.
Okay, next question is, can COA and quality documents be linked or attached to items and lot numbers?
The answer is yes. The certificate, all those tests that you saw us do, do linked to the lot number in the production order, and those could be then put onto C of A's and other types of documents.
Okay, last question. Can vendor certifications, audit results, and performance be maintained in the system?
Uh, yes, they can. And you saw a little bit of that when I went to write that PO. Again, we had certain documents that the vendor needed in order to provide us that part. In at least the Acumatica world, it's going to let us know, do those documents exist? Have they been returned to the vendor? And also, maybe their certification is lapsed. So the answer is all that data could be stored within the system. And more importantly than stored in the system is be actionable by the ERP system. If my expiration date for FDA compliance expires, that's well and good to know that. But again, within the Acumatica world, we could actually prevent a purchase order to be written because the system knows that that's no longer a valid document.
Thank you. So that's it for today. We're going to finish a little bit early to give you guys back a few minutes of your day. If you have any time, I put a survey in the chat just to get some feedback from you guys about today's event. It'll take 1 minute just to fill it out, and we'll give you a little Starbucks treat if you do. If you have any questions, give us a call, email us, or head to our website. We can help you out. And we'll be following up tomorrow with the recording of today's presentation. And yeah, if you have any other questions, just let us know. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ralph, for speaking on behalf of Ativo today.
Thank you,
And
Emily, for
yeah,
hosting
of
us.
course.
Appreciate it.
We'll stay on for another minute or so if you guys have any last minute questions. Otherwise, have a great day.
Very good.